Well, welcome to our first episode of Raise 'Em Up, a podcast for parents all about raising kids in the faith. And we'll get into that in just a second. But I wanted to take a moment first just to have us have the opportunity as the Raise 'Em Up team here to talk about our own experiences, introduce ourselves and our own experience with raising kids in the faith in all of those different ways, right? So I'll start with across the table from me right now, and then we can circle around the table with who's here with us.
Well, hi there. I'm Keith Gedicke. I'm the head of school here at Trinity. I've been at Trinity for 29 years as an employee, but I grew up here at Trinity and been here since 1960. So I've raised 3 kids, 31, and 2 boys at 26. And also I've raised hundreds and hundreds of kids in the faith by teaching in Lutheran schools for over 38 years.
That's awesome. I did not realize your boys were twins until just now.
They're twins.
I had no idea. There you go.
Yeah, they have the same birthday, so they have to be. It was a law.
Is that how that works?
It was a law. I mean, they had to do it that way. So
awesome. Thanks for being with us, Keith. And who else is with us today?
My name is Jan Martin. I am the director of children's ministry here at Trinity Klein. I have been on staff. This is my 10th year on staff here. I taught at the school 3rd grade for 7 years, and this is my 3rd year in kids ministry. Before that, I worked in public school and in kids ministry in another denomination and have been around kiddos. I have my own 2 girls. I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, trying our best to raise them in the faith. And yeah.
I love it. I love the diversity we have at the table with young adults in the 30s and 20s moving into the teens. And then we can move over to Melanie. Melanie, introduce yourself.
I'm Melanie Schultz, and I've got 2 kiddos that are 6 and 4 that were adopted. And then we also have a 4-month-old baby who was definitely a surprise blessing to our family. And I've taught in high school, theology classes in high school at Concordia for about 5 years, and taking this year off to just to stay at home with the new baby and have some extra after-school time with our other kiddos.
That's awesome. I'm loving the experience of the table. I am the one non-parent at the table. So Pastor Lee here, student ministry pastor here at Trinity Klein, working primarily with 7th to 12th graders, but also the joy now being here just over 5 years of seeing them in college and seeing that young adult stage and working with that, and certainly engaging a lot of the material that we're going to be talking about on this podcast. But before, right, seminary, or even during seminary, I started when I was 15 years old at a camp as a junior counselor, moved into being a counselor assistant, and which was kind of like a paid junior counselor, and then was a counselor in camp ministry for all of my time in college. And then upon leaving college, became the director of the camp. And it was funny because in college, I'd kind of said my dream is always to be a pastor at a camp. And there at 22 years old, that was pretty much my role as a seminarian, being in charge of this camp at a church that had a pastoral vacancy. So it was kind of crazy, the experiences along the way of what does it mean for kids to be raised in the faith in that church or camp environment. But it was a joy too, and different experiences. But I love the opportunity we have here though, to really target in on parents and in our parent podcast. So as we do this, Raise 'Em Up, we kind of played with a lot of different names, and our kind of the first way I kept referring to it was the Parent Book Club podcast. And that was because like one of the main ways that we'll be able to talk about is by walking through books that are about raising kids up in the faith. But we kind of change the name up here and call it Raise 'Em Up for a good reason. And so as you hear that, as you think about raising kids in the faith, why do you think this is an important conversation for us to be having with parents as they're kind of listening along with us?
Well, I'll start. One of the things I see changing over the years is kids have so much more available content. It used to be very controlled more. TV was limited. There wasn't a thing as cable. Yes, I'm old. But, you didn't have your own cell phone, all these things. But now kids can get content from everywhere, all time, 24/7. And so it's important that we make sure that they're getting the right content, because you get in life what you put into it. And if you're putting things into your head that are not good, probably going to reap that, right? And we just need more opportunity to put the good things in life. So.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. And certainly, Melanie, with your experience with high schoolers the last 5 years, you've had that same experience of the information
Absolutely.
Overload. Anything coming to mind when you think about that?
Well, I continue to go back to the idea that we're walking in a spiritual battleground, And just like any good soldier needs to evaluate the current situation they're in, like we need to evaluate the battleground that our kids are walking through. And it changes a lot. So our tactics have to change. Our awareness has to change. And the way that we work together as a community, as a church, and as parents, as individuals, it all just has to be ready to adapt and be flexible. And so we need a support team to do that, which is one reason I'm very excited about this, is to have a support team to just kind of bounce ideas off of, and to have resources like good books to read, and have the valuable information and wisdom of a shared group of people.
I love that. I love the shared community approach, because the deeper you dive into Scripture, and this is some of the things we'll find as we walk through different resources that we engage with, that's the picture that God gives us. Yes, we all have our personal, individual relationships with Him, but there's also this reality that He calls us into community together. And especially as we use that word church, which I always, anytime you hear me say, like, I'm giving away one of my secrets, I guess, but a lot of times when I'm preaching, anytime you hear me say God's church, I will quickly follow it up with God's people, right? Because that's that picture, that old, here's the church, here's the steeple, open the doors and see all the people, right? And that's the community. And for me, in my position, right, I see that need for the church truly to walk alongside of not just students, not just kids and raising things that way, but truly to walk alongside parents in the conversation. So we've heard from Keith and Melanie, Jan, from the experience of raising those teenagers, right? What do you think about us being able to have this conversation with parents and kind of for parents too?
No, absolutely. Being right in the middle of raising kiddos in this time. I've got two very different girls. I've got one, and both of them have grown up in the same house. They've both grown up going to church. Both of them attended a school that was a faith-based school, right? But they're walking different paths, and it's interesting to watch them. I've got one really struggling with her faith right now and questioning, is God real? Is all this, nonsense? And so having resources and people to talk to is amazing. I always tell my husband, I'm like, I was a great little kid parent. Like, I got that. That was not a problem. But now that they're teenagers, it is a whole new world. It's a completely different dynamic talking to them and just walking along with them through life and through their faith walk.
And I believe so many parents are going to be resonating with what you just said, that transition. And it's funny because whenever I talk with students, like I'll give them, because so many times you find them so frustrated with their parents about something. And we have that, of course, me being 7th to 12th grade and I have the confirmation program, like a lot of times I go straight to the catechism, a summary of Scripture and what's important in Scripture. So the 4th commandment is always in the back of my mind for us to honor our father and mother, that it may go well with us in the land that we're going to, right? The one commandment with a blessing. And so there's a level of respect and honor that God puts right next to Himself, right? You have the first 3 that are all about God, and parents are the first neighbors that we're called to love on the list. And so I'll tell them a lot of times, like, y'all do realize, especially the oldest kids, your parents have never done this before. You're the first one. And the other thing is that parents aren't perfect. And I think that's something we'll see modeled in a lot of the resources we'll engage with, is that it's okay for parents to admit mistakes. It's okay for parents to recognize when they messed up, because that is teaching their kids that it's okay for them to make mistakes and it's okay for them to have the conversation. That's kind of the point that Jesus makes to us so often in the Scriptures and in the Gospels, is that yes, you do fall short, and that's why He came, so that message of grace and forgiveness, and not just the message, but the actual grace and forgiveness could come into this world too. And one of the things that kind of stands out to me too, right, being the lone non-parent at the table, is that this conversation is not just for parents in a sense, but even what I would call spiritual parents. So I think back to conversations where I've had with people become empty nesters or even grandparents, and they think, oh, well, I can't volunteer with kids ministry or student ministry anymore because I don't have a kid in it. And it's like, no, right? As we're disciples who make disciples, our call is to continue to walk alongside of others, to see them grow. So I think of parents, I think of grandparents, I think of families in general, or even just the family of God. Anybody interested in what it means to raise kids in the faith, join us for this podcast. All right, and our next thing, we do want to kind of leave everybody with what to expect. What's our approach going to be? So certainly you kind of heard us hint at the reality that we'll be walking alongside of books. That was the original thing, and I love that, because you can order a book if it interests you, and you can walk alongside of us chapter by chapter in each episode. And we're going to be starting with Sticky Faith by Dr. Carapal and Dr. Chap Clark. We are so excited excited for that. These guys are kind of the name of the business in the youth ministry world, but also the young adult world, and really and truly in the raising kids in the faith world. So you're going to see Dr. Kara Powell over and over again in some of our resources along the way. But we'll also be able to engage in some other things too. And just initial thoughts for everybody here about Sticky Faith. What do you have? How did you enjoy so far our first intro into it?
I think it just has the question that all parents are asking. How do I make this relationship with Jesus something tangible for my kids? And how do I show them what he's meant to me in my life and allow there to be this opportunity for them to have that experience as well? So I'm just thrilled with the concept of the book, and all of the reviews, in the opening pages are just speaking so highly of this book and the practical knowledge. So I'm very looking forward to all of that.
That's awesome.
And I would like to say that it's an easier read. It's not one, they're not talking to you using lots of language that I have to go and look up, or if you're on your Kindle, you got to hover over the word and try to figure out what does that word mean. It's written in language that I can understand. Yeah, I like kid language. That's my level. So it's written at language that I think parents can understand, and it seems, I haven't finished it, but practical. Things that we can actually practically take and use with our kiddos.
And that's kind of my hope for all the books, all the resources we'll engage. And I do think the church, the broader church, has done a wonderful job at resourcing families because we all see the need, right? This is not a new need. We'll see that in our first episode talking about Sticky Faith as we enter into that first chapter. This is a broad church issue, not a singular church issue. So even if people are listening who are from different congregations or different denominations, I hope what you hear is we're all experiencing the same things. We're all seeing the same things. And that's good news because you're not alone, right? And we're all in this together too. So we'll be starting with Sticky Faith, but we'll also have opportunities for one-off episodes to talk about just general conversations of raising kids in the faith. But as we think about that, all right, there's a little piece of advice on the best ways to use this podcast. So the first question on the minds of plenty of people out there is going to be to read or not to read. So what would you say to someone who says like, oh, I don't know if I can listen to this because I'm not reading along? What do you think?
Don't guilt yourself that way and keep yourself from engaging in it because you didn't read. Don't let guilt shut you down. Listening will still benefit you.
Awesome.
We're pretty entertaining, so just listen to us. Right?
Yeah, well, maybe.
Keith's pretty entertaining anyway.
Well, I just say whatever floats your boat. I mean, some people are better listen by listening. Other people are better by reading. Simply, you can do whatever makes you happy. And you might want to read it, listen, then read it again, or listen and read, or read and listen. There's a lot of combinations out there.
Yeah.
And I would just say it's just like coffee. It doesn't matter how you enjoy it. Just enjoy your coffee, whatever you put into it. And let's not shame each other and be judgmental.
I love how you're never short of metaphors. That's what I really appreciate. It's like coffee, right?
Right, it's coffee, man. Just drink it the way you like it. And if you want tea, that's okay too.
There you go. Right. So I love that. Yeah. So I obviously, I say obviously, a little background on me. I was an English major, so I do enjoy reading. I value. I tell my students that all the time. Well, especially because when it comes to scripture, right? It's good to engage with scripture. But the cool thing is, like you kind of said, it's like coffee. You can engage it any way you want to these days. So I like that you bring up listening to it too, because there's the opportunity to listen to us, but also you might be an audiobook type person that you want to listen to these books chapter by chapter when we're walking through a resource. So that's totally there too. When it comes to where or how to listen, this is really fun, y'all that are listening to us right now. So I'd like to go around the table real quick and talk about what is your experience with podcasts. Okay, let's go here.
My experience is vicarious through my husband, who listens to lots of audiobooks and podcasts, and he usually does it on his run, or he's got something playing in the car on the way to work. And he's just always eager to chat about what he listens to. So he's kind of gotten me into it that way.
That's awesome. Jane, how about you?
Yeah, full disclosure, I have never in my life listened to a podcast. Yeah.
So you're going to be on one, though. That's so exciting.
This is going to be interesting.
You.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Okay.
So
You
I
have no
apologize
script.
in advance.
You're doing a great job.
You have no script.
Really
You just do it.
Apologize in
Just do what you got to do.
Exactly. Keith, how about you?
I do podcasts when I'm alone, which is never. So I've done a few, usually on long trips, but usually by myself too. But yeah, they're good. I like to make sure that I finish them So I always have to make sure I have dedicated time that I can listen to the full thing.
You bet.
But, it's like everything. If you don't make time, you don't have time. So.
Yep. And the car ride's my place for sure. I am new to podcasts too. I feel like even though I'm the youngest one here, for whatever reason, when podcasts first started to become a thing around, 2010 probably, I was like, that sounds like an old people thing. So I was like, I'm not going to do it, and I was very wrong. Like they're very cool, easy to listen to, especially in conversations like this. Those are the ones I enjoy the most. So I did finally get into a few. Most of mine are very ministry driven or something like that, but fun. I really enjoy fun. And so I will, on a long car trip or something like that, listen to it, but also on when I know my trip for some errand that I'm doing or something that I'm doing in my life, I'll do a podcast and I'll just listen to it in pieces. Because length of podcast, some people prefer shorter, right? And some people prefer longer, like a 45 minutes or so. So I know when I've listened to longer ones and I only have like a 15, 20 minute drive, I will the cool thing is when you turn off your car, when you turn it back on, it will come back on, right? If you keep it on your Bluetooth and stuff like that. Certainly an option when you're cleaning around the house. You have the option to watch it too. That's kind of crazy because this is a vodcast, a video podcast, but you can also just listen to it whenever it's convenient for you. So would love to be able to talk with anybody that has questions on that. You can find us audio wise on our Trinity app, which also means you can find us anywhere that you can find a podcast because being put on the Trinity app opens it up to things like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, whatever that is. I know I'm like showing my cards there too that I don't have a Google device, but you can find us anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find us on social media and you can find us on the YouTube and things like that. And I'm really just looking forward to the journey, guys.
Okay, so I'm really old. Is a vodcast, is that like a real word or did you make that up?
I could be making it up, but that's my word. I think I've heard some people say vlog, but I think that's a video blog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I very much will make up words.
I just have one
like
question.
That.
Is this AM or FM?
Oh.
And with that, thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to jumping into our first episode, our true episode with Sticky Faith by Carapal and Chap Clark as we look together, journey together, and what it means to raise kids in the faith. So thank you so much for joining us.